Oh, 9 o'clock on your Friday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyred and Jack Veltri along with you here. Another cold day. I heard Wes was teasing you about your toboggan yesterday as you were leaving.
What is up with everybody hating on this freaking toboggan? It is what is it, Columbia right here?
It's not the brand or the style. I think it's the fact that you're from the north. And we kind of expect you to be the Superman in the cold, I guess. You did wear shorts when it snowed the other week.
Yeah, I did. I've worn flip-flops in cold weather before, too. So it's like, it's all, here's the problem. When Yuva came after me first, his goons, his fan club decided to follow suit, and ever since then, it's just been. I'm sure I'm going to get heat for it tonight when I wear like a sweatshirt and a jacket and jeans and maybe like double socks in the freezing cold.
Now it's important to remember there is no like coverings for the press box at Founders, and I thought it was funny. Maneri, I guess, didn't realize that the other day when they played the game against Queens, and he apologized to the media the other day. He's like, "Oh, I forgot. I didn't know you guys had an open-air press box. I know you're cold out there just like we were."
Man, it is going to be – I heard it was freezing the other day. I'm considering going out and getting like gloves today, man, because it's like it's gonna be cold up there.
Get some hand warmers, like stick them in your like socks and your gloves.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that would be that might be the plan.
That might be the move, because when it's already cold when that sun goes down at 5:30, halfway through the fourth inning, it's gonna get worse.
Yeah, it's supposed to start at like 47 degrees at first pitch and then only go down, so it's gonna be
no thank you.
Chilly.
Talk to me when it's 75 and 80 degrees. Those are the days I'm looking forward to. Speaking of cold, one sport that thrives in the cold, hockey. I have been talking about this all morning long. I'm a casual hockey fan, right? Like I said, the Thrashers left Atlanta when I was in like elementary school or middle school. I don't remember what year it was exactly, and I've never had an affiliation with a hockey team since then. But let me tell you, the NHL knocked Four Nations out of the park. That was amazing.
I'm glad you mentioned it because I did want to bring this up at some point because I was watching it. And honestly, like I'm a casual hockey fan too. Big Islander fan, but I enjoy hockey, especially when the games are good and when the playoffs are in full thick of things. I don't think there's anything obvious. I think playoff baseball is great, but I think playoff hockey might be like the next best thing in terms of like the sports totem pole. But man, it's the Four Nations face-off. Unbelievable. It's insane how good this event turned out.
And I watched the Stanley Cup playoffs. I watched the Stanley Cup finals because there's an intensity with those games that you don't quite see in other sports. And every sports playoffs are intense, but hockey, with being the aggressive, they're fighting on the ice type of game that it is anyway, it kind of goes to the next level. And last night, watching this game as, McDavid makes the goal to win for Canada in overtime, there was like that second of like disappointment, right? Like that almost like losing depression. Oh my God, I can't believe the United States lost. At the end of the day, it was an exhibition. It doesn't really mean anything, but that's how invested they made you. They made you care because all those guys out on the ice were giving 1,000% because they cared too.
Oh yeah, like playing for your country, and you could just feel it in the national anthems and stuff before the game.
Yeah.
Like this meant everything to them. And you're right, it's just an exhibition. But you had Matthew Tkachuk, I think, after the game talking about, it was either him or Brady talking about just how devastating this loss is and stuff, and how Team USA deserved better and stuff. And it's like, this is more than just a game. Like, this is about pride and playing for your country. And I think the NHL has found a formula that we see how bad the NBA All-Star game is, right?
Which looks worse by comparison now.
Oh, it looks so much worse. And here's the thing, man. I've heard all about the Four Nations face-off, even with watching it. But without watching the NBA All-Star game, you would think at least I'd see highlights of it on Twitter and stuff. I haven't seen a thing. And it's just because there's no competition here. The Four Nations face-off has brought so much popularity to the sport, while the sports like the NBA is struggling. Even the MLB All-Star game isn't the same as what it used to be, though it's hard to not try to play hard in that type of game. So got to figure something out there.
And there's a reason why these All-Star games are placed where they are. Of course, we're just a little over a week and a half removed from the Super Bowl, which feels like longer. It's crazy to say that. But, you have the NBA All-Star Game and the NHL All-Star Game following the end of the football season, where a lot of the more casual sports fans are looking for something to get into. Because, again, we're all addicted to football, and football takes over the majority of what we do from August until early February when the Super Bowl happens. So after the Super Bowl, you're trying to grab those sports fans that are kind of lingering and looking for something to get into. And when you have your All-Star Game where your best talents are supposed to be on display, basically promoting your league, it's supposed to be able to bring those fans in. What the NBA did on Sunday night with Mr. Beast and Kevin Hart, love those guys, but no place in an All-Star Game and 2 hours of commercials to 10 minutes of on-court play and all that kind of stuff doesn't make me want to watch the NBA. Watching Four Nations makes me want to watch the NHL.
And the thing you mentioned before, man, they're trying. They're playing hard. Like, they're like fighting in the first
9 seconds.
Three fights on Saturday night.
And that was just the round robin. That wasn't even the championship game.
Yeah. And it's just like you see how tough this game is, like how much these guys want it. Like the amount of shots USA took in the overtime period before Connor McDavid had
they lived around Canada's goal.
Yes, like
I feel like the McDavid shot was like the only shot Canada got off in that entire overtime period.
And it was off a face-off in their own zone. And like I don't know, like seriously, I don't know what happened on that because it was just such an open lane to the net to take a shot. But like, I mean, look, you don't see that in the NBA. What you'll well, actually, I'll take that back. What you'll see in the NBA is a free lane given up to the rim because there's no defense.
Yeah, they're afraid to touch each other. That's why before they changed the format, the All-Star games were like 200 to 198.
It's so excuse my language. It's so stupid. Like it's so dumb, man. It's just like I don't understand the fun in it. I think the common consensus is, there's no defense and all they do is take 3-point shots. That's why I hear from my dad. That's why I hear from like literally any person that watched the NBA in the 90s and 2000s. Let's just go back to the simple All-Star game. And honestly, I've seen people bring up the World versus USA stuff. Does the NBA have the amount of different countries with players and stuff to make up like 4 nations?
I don't know if you're going to get the players to buy in.
That's
honestly.
The thing.
Because, again, hockey has always had this, like, intensity to it that was just on display again last night. I don't think you're going to suddenly make these guys who already didn't care about your exhibition game suddenly care about a different formatted exhibition game, even if it is for national pride. If you did USA versus the world or USA versus however many countries you could come up with.
I just don't know what the NBA is honestly like. It's a lost cause when it comes to this stuff because the guys don't want to try. They don't care. They get paid ends of millions of dollars.
They've got big egos.
That too.
Hockey does not have as many egos as the NBA has, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
And here's the big thing. There's one person that pretty much determines what goes on and what doesn't. Like I remember listening to a story about when the NBA had the bubble and stuff, and they had a team meeting, and if LeBron James wasn't in on doing the bubble, they were just going to shut the bubble down.
Biggest star.
It's the same thing here. Like if LeBron isn't in on doing some type of thing, they're not going to do it because why do it if LeBron's not going to do it?
It's a star-driven league, and that's been the detriment to the NBA for a very long time. So hats off to the NHL for the Four Nations face-off last night. I had a great time, and I see a lot of people that otherwise didn't care about hockey tuning into that one. It is 9 o'clock. We cannot, as always, forget to start things off the right way with a little bit of our usual Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines.
Eli Jersenbeck is going to be out for the season. It's discovered that he has a stress fracture in his right elbow. So he's going to have surgery on March 7th to have a screw or 2 screws inserted into his right elbow. And he'll miss the season.
Of course, that was the voice of Paul Mainieri yesterday afternoon talking to the media, giving the latest update on Eli Jersenbeck, and obviously not the one we wanted to hear. Stress fracture in the elbow, as he said, going to derail him for the entire 2025 season. Of course, missed all of last year with the recovery from the Tommy John surgery, and now just the future's up in the air for a very talented kid in Eli Jersenbeck.
Yeah, this is just terrible to hear. It's very sad, to be honest, and look, Jersenbeck did not have a good preseason of scrimmages. Like, his outings were just rough. And I don't think, at least I didn't think in the back of my mind, or anyone really, at least from what we hear with the team and stuff and the coaching staff, that, like, something was up. I mean, look, I'm glad they figured it out. It's just, it's unfortunate this is the news, because now it makes sense a little bit why he got lit up kind of in these scrimmages and stuff. But yeah, you got to replace him, for the season, which, I mean, they've already been doing, but now you got to do it for an entire season.
I think I remember you saying this to Jay when I was driving over to meet you guys at Village Edit. You said his velocity was still pretty high in the preseason, right?
No, his velo was fine. Like, he was throwing about 95 and stuff. And Paul brought up an interesting point yesterday talking about it. I think him and Eli had talked about how his arm was always just super sore after throwing, which, I mean, pitchers they have ice on their arms and stuff normally after outings, so it's not uncommon for that. But I think Paul was just a little surprised at how sore it got, and then when they saw the X-ray and stuff, I mean, there was a crack in the bone and the stress fracture. So it stinks because he hasn't pitched since 2023 in a regular season game, and keep in mind he had just undergone Tommy John last year, made a recovery from that, pitched in the fall, pitched in the spring, and then this happens, and it's the worst possible news you could have gotten, I think.
Yeah, and look, we had him in here last fall, kind of talking about his injury recovery and looking ahead to the season. He was excited to get back there on the mound and contribute to this first year of the Paul Mainieri era and what this team could be. And you just kind of feel for the kid for not being able to go out there and do it. And I wonder where he would have slotted in as far as a role. Because, again, he's a guy that started for you. He's a guy that came in and out of the bullpen a couple seasons ago when we saw that talent really on display. And, again, you have a lot of good things in your pitching staff, but adding him at full health would have just been even more better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, if you could have found a way to get Jersenbeck back to being the guy that had 36 strikeouts, 6 walks, excellent command in his first year at South Carolina, you'd be unbelievable. That'd be your Friday night starter right there. It's just he didn't have the command in the preseason, walked a lot of guys, and it led to guys hitting him around. So that's part of it too, but it's also like he was hurt. So you hope he makes a full recovery here and he's back by 2026. We didn't get an exact timetable on when he'll return, but surgery on March 7th, and then hopefully he's back by the start of the 2026 season.
Yeah, and I know when he had his initial injury 2 seasons ago, there was talks like, well, maybe he'll just recover and then go straight to the draft after that and kind of forego playing at Carolina. But when you've been away from baseball for this long, you need a season to kind of reprove yourself. So assuming he doesn't transfer, I would say he's probably going to try and come back for 2026.
Yeah, I just don't see how he could get drafted in 2025. Like, look, he was considering being drafted this past year, never got drafted. So I find it hard he would be drafted after not pitching in a regular season game for 2 years. So going to have to come back and prove it in 2026, I think. And whether it's here or somewhere else, I think that is going to have to be the case.
Yeah, certainly wishing the best Eli Jersenbeck. A bummer that he's not going to be able to pitch this season. And obviously we hope he recovers and come back on the mound for this team in 2026. Hear a little bit more of what Coach Mainieri had to say coming up next. Team back in action later on this afternoon, taking on Milwaukee. First pitch at 4 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 3:45 here on the Game. 2 o'clock first pitch on Saturday, and then a 1:30 first pitch to round out the series coming up on Sunday. All those on the Game here in Columbia as well as Myrtle Beach. It is the Extra Point. It's all right, and Jack Belcher along with you on your Friday here on the Game. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Belcher along with you on your Friday here on The Game. Again, talking Gamecock baseball as they get set for their second series of the season, looking to stay undefeated as they take on the Milwaukee Panthers later on this afternoon. First pitch at 4 o'clock. You know, on the heels of the Eli Jersenbeck injury, a question was asked to Maneri yesterday on if there's any kind of urgency when it comes to ramping up the pitchers, especially now knowing that somebody that maybe you hoped was going to be a key piece of your rotation is not going to be there this season.
Well, I think that's what we're doing already. Yeah, we've, the 3 starters from last week through five innings, and depending on pitch counts, and it's still a long season. You don't want to be crazy because if you're fortunate enough for them to stay in your rotation and be healthy, that's 14 starts in the regular season. You hope there'll be one in the SEC tournament, there'll be one in the regional, one in the super regional, 2 in the World Series. So that's a lot of pitching, and so you just can't be crazy too early. We'll make the smartest decisions that we can when it comes to trying to win the game, but also making sure we take care of the health of the players.
And again, we've talked about this for the past week and the 5 games that we've seen so far. Pitching has been an absolute highlight so far. A good start out of your starters. Your bullpens come in really clutch. And outside of, Pitts are having troubles finding the strike zone in Game 1 last week against Sacred Heart. You've really done a really good job of keeping control of pretty much every single game. Got into a little bit of trouble the other day by letting a couple runs across the plate against Queens, but corrected that with the offense at the bottom of the 8th inning. But again, you really can't ask for much more than what you've seen out of your pitching staff so far.
Nah, they've been excellent so far. We'll see how it looks after this weekend because your rotation has only made 1 start, but it was as good as it gets last week with Matthew Becker, Dylan Eskew, and Jake McCoy. Like, what more can you ask for than 27 strikeouts, 1 walk, and one run given up? That's as good as it gets right there. So, obviously, with losing Jersenbeck, he's more of a starter than anything, so you're definitely going to need to fill those innings out as best you can, but you're already doing that, which is good. And then out of the bullpen, you've been terrific. Guys like Parker Marlott, Brendan Sweeney, pitchers like that have been awesome so far. And I think South Carolina's got enough pitching to make it work. You just hope everyone else can stay healthy now because that's the main thing here.
I went back and looked at, just for comparison's sake, the first 5 games of last season, which did include games against Winthrop and Queens, in addition to starting the season against Miami of Ohio, and how they pitched compared to what we've seen through 5 games so far. So in total, last year, through 5 games, they had surrendered 21 hits, 9 runs, 17 walks, and 48 strikeouts. Through 5 games this year, 19 hits, 8 runs, 8 walks, 64 strikeouts. You have improved in every area. And again, it's small sample size. It's just the beginning of the season. But for a direct comparison, you're starting off the year even better than you did last year.
It's just wild what this pitching staff is doing right now. Like, I don't even think most people expected the strikeouts to be this high.
Maneri didn't expect it. He even said so.
Like, this is supposed to be a pitching staff that won't overpower you, but they're going to get ground balls and flyouts and stuff and do those things. And SEC play might be a whole different thing because every team's going to be good in terms of hitting and stuff. But, like, right now, man, like, they're striking out guys at a high rate. And I think credit on that probably needs to be given to pitching coach Terry Rooney. He's done an excellent job, and I've heard nothing but good things from Terry and just what people have to say about him. Like, he's done wonders with this group, and I know it's 5 games, but it's a sample size we have right now. It's the only one we have. So it's been very impressive so far.
Yeah, it absolutely has been. And again, go back to Maneri's comments before the season. He said straight up, look, we're going to be a team that's going to pitch contact. We're going to have to rely on defense, which is why it was so important to make sure you had your best defenders on the field. And I've been very impressed with things that I've seen out of KJ Scobie. What Naraki, I think, has the only true error so far. You had the deal with Petrie the other day at first base. I think he was just cold and probably not playing his best game that day.
We're not going to chalk those up.
No, I don't hold that against him too much.
No, but like, look, the defense has been great. I think you're right. KJ Scobie over at third base has been awesome, and I think the hitting is going to – he's not even hitting bad right now. I think the hitting will come along to where he's a real threat at the plate, and the defense is already there, and look, it's just everything is better so far this season for the South Carolina team.
The one thing that's really good to start off the season is Nathan Hall in that leadoff spot. Coach Maneri yesterday talking about what makes Nathan Hall such a good leadoff guy.
I'll tell you what, I told you he was going to be special, and you can see what I'm talking about. I look at him and I see a future major leaguer. I've had some really good players in my coaching career, and Nathan has the capabilities of being right up there with any of them. When you look at him physically, I mean, that's what they look like. I mean, he's just, he's tall, he's athletic, he can run, he can throw, he can hit the ball as hard as anybody, he can hit it as far as anybody, and he's becoming a really good hitter and a tough out. So, for me, that's a five-tool guy, what you look for in baseball. So he's a tremendous blend of speed and power at the top of the order. I've never been one, well, I guess I have on occasion, but that scrappy little leadoff hitter type guy, For me, if the guy can, like last night, he led off the game with an extra base hit. He'll lead off some games with home runs. If he leads off with a single or a walk, he can steal second base and get in scoring position right away. He's really an outstanding center fielder. That might be the best part of his game. So this kid is, he just needed somebody to believe in him and give him the opportunity to make some mistakes and keep playing. And we've given him that opportunity here. And I just think the best is yet to come with that kid.
Currently leading the way with a 500 batting average. He's gotten on base at a 545 clip so far. Coach Mary mentioned those extra base hits. He's got 4 of them so far this season, 3 doubles and a home run, which currently leads the team. And again, a couple of stolen backs as well. Those are all the qualities you want in a leadoff guy. And again, he's going to cool off at some point because that's just how baseball works. But man, what a 5-game start for Nathan Hall.
And he's unbelievable. I mean, he does so many things right for this team. And you mentioned them all. There's no need to rehash, but it's just you can't do anything but sing his praises. The guy is just a great baseball player, and it's just crazy how, again, Maneri and his team have done an excellent job of identifying the players they want. And look, found a diamond in the rough from your arch rival. So nothing better than that. And it's good to see he's off to such a really blazing start this year.
Yeah, and again, you got him at the top of the lineup, got the meat of the order with guys like Petrie and Kennedy Jones playing really well right now. And if that continues throughout the season, as well as getting some of these guys towards the bottom of the lineup like like Lee Croy and Blake Jackson to come along, and then this 1 through 9 should be pretty solid as we get closer to SEC play.
Yeah, that's the thing. Not everyone's hitting at the same time, but eventually, when these other guys get going, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
And hopefully the ball's flying around pretty nicely around Founders Park coming up today as well through the rest of the weekend as they take on the Milwaukee Panthers. Spring football games are slowly disappearing right before our eyes, and a SEC school, the latest to add their name to the list of schools no longer partaking in the annual spring tradition. We'll get into that coming up next, but as we head into this break, since we have been talking about baseball, I do have 2 family 4-pack tickets, basketball, for 2 family 4-pack tickets for basketball tomorrow night. Men's basketball as they take on Texas at 8:30 over at Colonial Life Arena. So callers number 4 and 5 right now. Win yourself a family 4-pack of tickets to go see the men's basketball team in action, taking on the Texas Longhorns as they search for that first win in conference play in 2025. Spring games up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler and Jack with you on your Friday here in the game. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. Howard Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Friday on the Game. Reminder, you can go online at 1075thegame.com and enter the Gamecock Traditions Over-Under contest for a chance to win a Gamecock Traditions gift card. This week's Over-Under, total strikeouts for Gamecock pitching versus Milwaukee this weekend set at 28.5. So again, go online, click the contest tab, and pick your Over-Under for your chance to win a Gamecock Traditions gift card. Big news here lately in college football, all stemmed from those comments Matt Rule made a couple weeks back about spring games. And Nebraska was kind of the first to say, we feel like we don't want to get our players poached, so we're not going to have a spring game. Well, then, the likes of Southern Cal, Ohio State, now Texas joining the fray of not having the annual game in the spring. That's an inter-squad scrimmage where you kind of get to know the players ahead of the next season starting. It's funny, a year ago, we were having conversations of, hey, instead of having a scrimmage, maybe you go play against Wofford or Furman or some smaller school in state just to get a feel of a game against a different team. Now we're talking about these games maybe going away completely.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about, man. Like, as if there isn't enough change in college athletics, specifically college football. This is a big one, right? And I understand it from the standpoint of, for one, injuries. You don't want to give away, film or anything. Essentially, you don't want to expose yourself too much in a spring game. I mean, like I understand all of that. However, like you mentioned in your point there, like it's about fans getting to know the players and stuff. That's the beauty of it, because it's a free event that people can go attend and watch, and they get to see the future of their team and some of their favorite players in action in a not so crazy atmosphere. It's just an enjoyable time and stuff. And growing up, I went to spring games here a few times. Like, I always enjoyed it as a kid, and it's I hope it stays around for South Carolina's sake. But in terms of college football, I understand why teams are getting rid of it. I just don't think it's the best move from a fan perspective.
I still kind of laugh at what Matt Rule said, because what talent was off everybody's radar until their spring game last year that suddenly said, hey, let's go get this guy because of what he did in the red and white game or whatever they call it out there.
No
like,
one's thinking that.
I find that very hard to believe. And like, if you are putting that much film out there, why is your playbook that elaborate? We heard Dow Loggins talk about it last year, and we know the deal. The spring game's vanilla. You're not supposed to show anything. You're just running basic routine plays to kind of knock the rust off for these guys to close out spring practice, and you're not supposed to show your hand on anything. Like, is that just a case of, and Marcus Satterfield's the OC, maybe, was he drawing up too complex of a game plan at last year's spring game to where they were exposing what they were going to do in the fall?
Probably. I mean, let's be honest. That thing was not getting simplified. But yeah, man, it's like, again, it's supposed to be fun. Like, and also half the time they're just going through practice. It's just an open practice, if you will. Like, I just don't understand why teams feel the need, like why this is becoming like a phenomenon that every team needs to hop on for.
Preston brought up a really good point this morning in that Matt Rule probably said something that everybody was already thinking, right? I'm sure there was a lot of coaches out there like, man, I don't really want to have to do this spring game, and I don't want to put the potential chance of somebody getting poached based on this thing out there, but never really said anything. But when Rule said it, and brought up tampering and all this kind of stuff and stealing players from your roster, then like coach said, oh, yeah, I agree with that. And we're not going to have our spring game anymore. And I hate it. It's, again, one of those things that's just a harmless tradition in college football that's existed for so long. And, again, for so many people, it's your chance to go to the stadium, usually for free, just to be in the atmosphere, the environment. I can't imagine how many little kids are introduced to Gamecock football or whatever school you cheer for by going to a spring game and getting to see the new guys that you're going to be watching this fall and learning who's what jersey number and stuff like that. And again, just kind of almost having a practice run for what a fall Saturday is going to be like that now seem to be going by the waysides. And yeah, I know like Southern Cal's doing fan events and all that kind of stuff. It's not the same. Like, going table to table to meet the players is great. And those kind of things should exist, but I don't think it should take the place of a spring game.
Think about the children, man. Like
the children.
Think about the kids. Think about the next generation. Like, I understand that. It's just, look, I think you gotta. I think at some point it would be nice to see, all these other sports have scrimmages. Like, they can play other teams and stuff. Football, it's probably a lot more complex and stuff for whatever reason. But, I think the NCAA needs to pass something eventually where, teams like South Carolina, like you mentioned, can go play Wofford or one of these random schools, SC State, in a scrimmage right nearby.
Yep.
That would be cool. And I think that is the solution to doing this. But again, if you're really worried about other schools poaching players and stuff, they're not going to do it just based on the fact of, look at what this guy did in a spring game. No.
It's one of those things that I'm sure Matt Rule wanted to get rid of anyway. Needed a legitimate excuse, found through the way of he described it, tampering or whatever you want to call it, and that was the reasoning. And again, I think so many other coaches probably felt the same way and now see this as a way to eliminate themselves. And again, it sucks for the fans, and I hate it so much. And if the idea of tampering is the reason why these things are going by the wayside, I wonder, does this start trickling to bowl games? And not necessarily college football playoffs, because you are playing for something. But we often talk about bowl games as kind of the start of your next calendar year, right? Where a lot of times you'll have talent that isn't returning, either jump in the portal or opt out. So the guys playing in your bowl game that have eligibility left are probably going to be the ones that return for the next season. So at what point, if we're really concerned about tampering, do we start saying, I don't got to play this bowl game, but I don't want to, if you're a team that, is maybe 500 and you got a special player that you don't want to have exposed on national television, would you say, maybe start holding these guys out, or maybe I just go with all backups in my bowl game because I don't want to risk anybody else getting more tape out there so they get poached in the transfer portal? It sounds ridiculous, but I could see it happening.
I could see it happening too. It's an unfortunate reality because bowl games are so fun. It's a good time, regardless of whether players opt out or not. And that's a whole nother thing. But losing bowl games just in general would be a real big blow, I think, to a lot. It would be a turnoff to a lot of people that are interested in this sport. If I didn't cover college football and stuff, I probably wouldn't watch otherwise as a fan if that stuff's going to happen. It's just there's a certain point you just don't do things to. Keep the bowl games. It helps the schools in the sense of getting exposure, money, all that. An extra game for the players. You take that away, it's a really bad look. If you want to wipe the spring games out, fine. But don't do it with actual meaningful football games.
College football and sports in general kind of copycat, right? If one program or one team hits on something that's successful, everybody else is going to follow suit. And you look at that with any kind of special offensive scheme or defensive scheme in football. Once, the league figures it out or the conference figures it out, everybody's doing it. And same thing with an idea like this, where, again, I think Matt Rule kind of spoke for a lot of coaches who probably wanted to get rid of their spring game but didn't have a legitimate reason why. But, hey, tampering? That's a good angle. Yeah. We don't want guys to be tampered with on our roster, so we're gonna eliminate the spring game as well. And, yeah, we'll do a fan event in the summer or something along those lines. But I could – and – Coach Beamer's not said anything about it. Nobody here at the South Carolina Athletic Association said anything about it. But, if next year Carolina, because they already announced their spring game happening in April for this year, if next year they said, you know what, we're not gonna do it this year, I wouldn't be surprised by it. I'm not saying I want that to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked.
No, I wouldn't be surprised by it either. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And again, once I think it's something that will definitely be asked Beamer the next time the media gets to talk to him or whatever, if it hasn't already been asked already. But I do think it's something that, I think Shane gets it, for one, that the fans, take their time to come out here and stuff, and they put their hard-earned money into this. And I know this is a free event. It helps people get to know the team. That. I think that's why you would continue to do it. And if you're so worried about anything else beyond tampering and stuff, injuries, heck, make it like the Pro Bowl if you want. Make it a flag football game or something.
What Ole Miss did last year.
Yeah, exactly. Do something like that, but you keep something on the field. Don't take that away from the people that maybe can't afford to go to a regular season game between South Carolina and LSU or something. You know what I mean? Keep it available to the general public.
Unfortunately, a lot of people in college football don't think about the fans at the end of the day, which
No,
is why these kind of things do end up going by the wayside. But I agree with you. I think Beamer has a good connection, understands the importance of something like this, and I would think he wouldn't want to get rid of it. But if they decided to, again, kind of falling in line with a lot of other programs in college football, I wouldn't be shocked.
No, I would not be shocked either. And we'll see what happens, man. But it's just another thing that it's so random in college football, and it does stink to see some schools getting rid of it.
Speaking of random, battle royals are random at times. A NFL player proposed a question yesterday that I want to turn a little bit more localized on who would win in a Royal Rumble. We'll discuss that coming up next to close out today's edition of The Extra Point. He's Jack Beltry. I'm Tyler Head, along with you on your Friday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Friday on the game. We'll get into our Royal Rumble discussion in just a second. But some breaking news from the baseball world. The Yankees have reversed their long-standing policy against facial hair.
Yeah, so it started back in the mid-'70s under George M. Steinbrenner, the owner of the Yankees at the time. And 1976, the rule became that you have to have a clean-shaven policy. So no beards, anything like that. You can have a mustache and stuff, and your hair has to be to a certain point trimmed, but nothing, no beards or anything like that. And Hal Steinbrenner, George's son, decided to finally get with the times and change it. I think it's a good change, and now it's going to be well-groomed beard. So nothing insane, I don't think, but there's a little bit more leeway to this.
Who's the first player to try and have a mullet?
Ooh, I don't know, man. I don't know. Not Judge, not Stanton. I don't know. Probably just one of these random guys that comes on the team midway through the year, and it's like they already got one and stuff. Like, I can't wait to see the Yankees sign a guy like a Brandon Marsh or something. Someone with like an insane amount of hair.
That's what I was thinking. Like Brandon Marsh on the Yankees would be hilarious.
Yeah, like that would be unreal. But no, it's good to see. I think after seeing Devin Williams with the beard versus when he had to shave literally the day of spring training, it's just like, I mean, look, these guys look silly. Just cut the rule, and you're still keeping up with the policy at the same time by making it well-groomed.
Yankees getting with the modern times when it comes to their grooming policy. Good to see. Yesterday, Kyle Hamilton posted a tweet that says, not trying to be political, but if all 45 presidents were in the Royal Rumble, who would win? Now, I want to localize this a little bit more. We won't talk about presidents, but it got me thinking, if all 16 active SEC football coaches were in an over-the-top rope battle royal, who's winning that thing?
Oh, gosh. Let me think.
Now, you got to think, you have to lift your opponent over and dump him out. So I think size matters here.
And also, like, age, I think, matters, too, because, like, I mean, I don't think anyone's, like, over, like Sam Pittman's, I think, one name I would think of, because he's a big
dude.
Guy.
He's a big guy.
But he's 63. I don't think he's going to be doing that necessarily. Honestly, here's a sleeper for you right here. I think Mike Elko, honestly.
Elko was the first one that came up to me. Big guy, younger. He looks older, but he's like in his late 40s, which is hard to believe. He might be nimble enough to maneuver around. And again, he's a bigger guy, got a bigger frame. It takes some effort to get him over the top rope.
Yeah, I think Elko is the ideal candidate here. And it's just like, the rest of the SEC coaches, I think, honestly, for the most part, which is probably a good thing, they're relatively in, like, decent shape. Like, I mean,
they are.
Like, some of them, like, Beamer seems to be in good shape. Kiffin, Drinkwitz, Napier. I mean, guys like that. So,
I think, can we agree that Drinkwitz gets eliminated first?
Well, I was actually going to go probably Brian Kelly, to be honest.
Okay, all right.
I think Brian Kelly or, like Mark Stoops or someone. Honestly, Lane Kiffin would be... Lane Kiffin would be so entertaining in something like this.
Lane Kiffin, to me, from my years of watching professional wrestling, is the heel that just waits outside the ring.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I don't have to be in the ring until it's down to, like, the final person, and then he slides in and then dumps them over and wins. Like, he would have some kind of crafty strategy.
Of course.
To try and win.
There's always a strategy with him. There's nothing easy about that guy. But, yeah, no, I think a guy like Brian Kelly or guys like that. Drinkwitz, yes, I would definitely be cool with someone just pounding him.
I feel like they would all gang up on him and just be like, let's get this dork out of here.
Yeah, let's
toss him over.
Send him back to, like, App State or something. Like, get him out.
Yeah. Trying to, like, who would be an underdog? Who's somebody that's just kind of like would fly under the radar with this?
Maybe a guy like maybe Stoops. Maybe Jeff Lebby. I think those are guys.
Lebby might be a good one.
Lebby,
he's a big
Lebby's
guy.
41.
41, young.
He could handle his own, I think.
He's a big guy. Yeah, I feel like he might be a little scrappy.
Yeah. Here's an underrated one that we haven't talked about, because I think he's a perfect medium. Like, he's not, like, huge in terms of, like, Sam Pittman, Elko big, but he's got enough beef on him to where he could hold his own. Kirby Smart.
Yeah, a little on the shorter side. He was a defensive back, but
yeah.
I feel like if it came to fisticuffs, he might be a little scrappy too. He's from South Georgia. Know how to fight in South Georgia. I still think Elko is probably my favorite here.
Yeah,
he's got the youthfulness to a degree, and he's a big guy. He's tough to move.
Now how does Beamer stack up?
Ooh, I feel like Beamer's one that's gonna be flying around all over the place. Scrappy, all over the place. Hitting everything that moves, kind of thing. And I feel like the erraticness of being in the ring might be his detriment. Because while he's focusing on trying to take somebody else out, somebody comes behind him and dumps him over, something along those lines.
Listen,
I think he could hold his own, but I think I don't know if he'd last to the very end.
Listen, man, it took multiple coaches for him to be held back against
That's right.
Brett Bielema. So, Alec, he was ready to. If this was the Royal Rumble in that Citrus Bowl, I think Beamer would be ready to go to war. And that burning fire and desire, coaches have that. Beamer's that would be his thing right there to keep him going.
We are 2 months away from WrestleMania. I still want to see Shane Beamer versus Brett Bielema at WrestleMania in Las Vegas in 2 months.
You know what? We've seen them do wiffle ball and dodgeball in the offseason stuff for Gamecock football. Let's do a Gamecock football Royal Rumble. Do that instead of the spring game, maybe, if you want to get rid of it.
Coach Beamer, if you're listening, get ready.
Let's see it.
Get ready.
Let's see it.
See if you can survive the Royal Rumble of SEC coaches. That'll do it for the Extra Point, or hour one of the Extra Point. Coming up next in hour number 2, is college football losing its magic? I'll tell you what I stumbled across yesterday that makes me think maybe so. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher under Friday here on the Game. Tyler Head here for our friends once again over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I tell you about it all the time, but I'll remind you once more. Starting to notice some weird things going on around your home, you could have serious foundation issues. Those things include cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors and windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you notice any of these problems, you need to get them addressed immediately. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com, and they will send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation problems and get them fixed right so you and your family can live without worry going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com and let your home's foundation be in the hands of our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. Welcome back in. Hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. It's all right along with you on this Friday. Of course, Gamecock baseball in action a little bit later on this afternoon, taking on Milwaukee at 4 o'clock. I'll have some more tickets to give away a little bit later on in the show for Sunday's game against Milwaukee, so be sure you're tuned in for that if you want to go see Paul Maneri's crew wrap up the second series of the season over there at Founders Park. I posed a question earlier, and I want to get back into this. Do you feel like the magic of college football is slowly being lost as time goes on? I asked this question, or at least heading in that direction. I asked this question because I came across a Reddit thread yesterday. And for those that don't know, Reddit is kind of like a public online forum, and there exists a Reddit subreddit for just about everything, which, is its own kind of little community where you can go in there and discuss, books and movies and different sports leagues and teams and stuff like that. And there's a Reddit subreddit for college football. And the title of this post was, could a NASCAR fan explain what they did to lose their magic, like some people are saying college football is? And this resonated with me because, of course, if you listen to the station long enough, I'm a really big NASCAR fan and obviously a huge college football fan, given the job that I do, obviously. So I understand the question that's being asked. And up to this point, I hadn't thought about making the comparison as much, but I get where they're going with this. For those unfamiliar, NASCAR used to be, very, very popular. Late 90s, early 2000s, it was truly one of the most popular things going on in American sports. And starting in 2004, things slowly began to change. Started off with a new championship format, which was then known as the Chase, now known as the playoffs. The cars started to change, became less of the cars that you see on the street. They started changing the format. Of the race, now broken up into stages. They started changing the tracks they go to, kind of moving away from some more traditional venues that, fans in the Southeast, where the majority of NASCAR fans reside, weren't too pleased with. And slowly over time, the sport just looked completely different, where if you're a NASCAR fan that stopped watching in 2003, and you suddenly turned on a race today in 2025, the race in Atlanta this weekend, if you suddenly decided to watch that race, you would not recognize a large majority of what you're watching because it's so different. And it wasn't one thing. It wasn't just one major thing. It was things that changed over time that eventually pushed people away. And when you look at the ratings for Sunday night's Daytona 500, roughly 7 million people watch, which is good, but it's about a third of the of the audience that watched the highest rated Daytona 500 in 2006, which was like around 20 million, right? So something's happened between now and then that's caused people to move away from the sport. And the question's being asked because college sports in general, but specifically college football, is going through so many changes right now. I think there's a fear for a lot of people that magic, if it's not already lost, could certainly continue to head in that direction. And the top comment on this thread says, in reference to NASCAR's problem, it was never-ending change. It became unrecognizable to so many people. And I think that's what we're dealing with right now with college football, that the sport is becoming less recognizable to so many of its core diehard fans. Doesn't mean you're going to stop watching. And look, because something's lost its magic doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. Again, I can understand that NASCAR is not as special as it once was. I still watch every week. I'm still a diehard fan, but I recognize that, hey, things that came before were probably a better way of doing things compared to things that we do now. Same thing with football. Just because you think the magic's gone doesn't mean you're not going to watch anymore, doesn't mean you're not going to support the Gamecocks or anything along those lines. But I think it's an interesting question to pose to people on if you feel that magic has truly left. Everybody kind of has their own favorite era of college football, favorite couple of years when you enjoyed the sport the most. And maybe it was when you were a kid. Maybe it was when you were in college enjoying it then. But everybody kind of has that time frame. But when they say, man, that was when the sport was the best for me. And to me, that was roughly, 2007 or 2012. That was between my middle and high school years. And yeah, again, maybe my nostalgia glasses of being a kid at the time certainly helped with that. But that to me is when I enjoyed college football the most. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy it today, because I absolutely do. And I'm blessed to be able to have a job that allows me to come in here and talk about it every single day. But I recognize, hey, a lot of the things that we did back then are maybe better than some of the things that we do right now. So I can understand that magic, of being lost a little bit. And I asked the audience this morning in the early game when talking about this on that show, some of the reasons why. And a lot of things are things that people pointed to that I thought people were going to point to, were things like NIL, right? And look, I'm pro player. I am all for players getting paid, benefiting off their name, image, and likeness, because as we know now, it was illegal for roughly the 100-plus years that the NCAA had existed prior to NIL becoming a thing, because it was violating antitrust. So I'm all good with players getting paid and benefiting and all that kind of stuff, but that's something that draws people away, because, as a caller put it this morning, they're not playing for the university anymore. They're not playing for the pride of representing South Carolina or Texas or Ohio State or whatever. So many of these guys are chasing bags, and whatever school's the highest bidder is going to get their services. Now, that doesn't mean it's everybody. And you look at guys like Takarion Joyner, guys like Luke Doty. And Luke Doty, by the way, is returning for 2025, in case you didn't know, does have extra eligibility remaining. That's why those guys are so beloved now, especially in a community like South Carolina, because they stayed, because they didn't go anywhere. They could have had the option to transfer. They could have had the option to maybe chase a better payday somewhere else, but they wanted to stay at South Carolina, and they've become so rare, because that used to be the normal thing in college football. When a guy came in as a true freshman, you knew you had him for at least 3 years. If he was an amazing superstar player, he was going to go to his draft after his junior year. If he was a good player, he might hang around for 4 years and play as a senior. But that's such a rare thing now, because the transfer portal is so rampant, and every single year we get more and more guys going into the transfer portal. And there's some guys that get left in the transfer portal that you don't think about that, but it happens because everybody's seeking a new opportunity. Everybody's seeking the next thing, whatever's going to benefit them the most, whether it be playing time, whether it be NIL, whatever that opportunity is. So many of these guys are chasing in the thousands every single year, trying to find something better for the next college football season. That drives people away, and I completely understand that. We used to have a very simplified championship format where it was like, okay, if you wanted to play in the national championship game, since that became a thing, 20, 30 years ago now, crazy to think about, as kooky as it sounded, you had to be one of the best two teams in the country based on the algorithm that was the BCS formula, which meant you had to be pretty much perfect. You had to either be undefeated in a strong conference or have one very good loss if you wanted any shot at playing for a national championship. That has changed quite a bit. Even in the 4-team playoff, you still had to be almost as close to perfect as possible. You usually had to be a conference champion, though we saw some omissions for that over the years. But more often than not, you did have to be a conference champion, just to have a shot at playing in the expanded, at the time, 4-team playoff. Now, in the 12-team playoff, and we saw a perfect example of it this year, you had a Ohio State team that won quality loss against Oregon. Okay, that's not the end of their season. But in any other year past in the history of college football, losing that game to Michigan would have completely derailed any shot they had at a national championship. And yeah, we were talking about it coming away from that game. Oh my God, this team's done. They're cooked. Ryan Day's going to get fired, all these kind of things. And guess what? They turned up the knob in December and January and went on to win the national championship, which they, by the format, deserved to do, right? Because they got in as the 8 seed and ran the table all the way to winning the national championship in Atlanta a month ago now. But in years past, they wouldn't have had a shot. They would have been a 10-2 team that missed out on playing its conference championship game and would not have had any way of getting into a 4-team playoff or a BCS national championship game. Michigan would have derailed their season, which adds so much value to that rivalry win, which it's still a big deal in Michigan, and it still bothers a lot of Ohio State fans. They were not able to beat their rival in a national championship season, but the effect that game had on what was going to happen after it was kind of nullified. Yeah, you prevented Ohio State from playing for a Big Ten championship game and potentially getting the number 1 overall seed or one of the seeds with a bye. But it didn't derail their season as it would have in years past. And that's something that takes a little bit of the magic away from college football. As we get set for an expanded playoff even more in 2026, which is either going to be 14 or 16 teams, we'll wait for the news on that here coming up pretty soon. You're going to have 3 lost teams from the SEC make it in. And that's great if you're one of those 3 lost teams, but if you're just a casual observer or your team's not in, you're just trying to enjoy the postseason format, it may bother you that a team that's lost 3, maybe 4 games, depending on how crazy of a season it is, still has started a national championship compared to how things have been in years past. I will say this, compared to, again, NASCAR, which is kind of the tipping off point of this from this Reddit post, college football has the advantage of deep ties with its fans, where you cheer for Carolina because maybe you went there, maybe your dad went there, maybe your whole family went to Carolina. You just have it ingrained since birth that you are a Carolina fan through and through, no matter how good or bad the team is. There have been certainly some plenty good and bad over the years. It's good right now, which is good, but you're kind of born into it, right? As opposed to like a NASCAR where you gravitate towards drivers based on their skill or personality, and those guys obviously come and go. In college sports, it's more about the program itself when it comes to establishing your individual fandom. And that's deep, right? And I don't think that's going to go away because of all the changes being made to college football. I do think you're going to find a lot more people as time goes on saying, I still love Carolina or whatever team you root for, but outside of that, I'm not as inclined to watch this other stuff going on compared to years past. So the attendance for home games and all those kind of things will be fine, but could ratings start to dip? Maybe. And that's the bottom line in college football and all of sports. If your ratings start to dip, guess what? You're losing money. And that's when you have problems. And college football has been this skyrocket for so long. And look, we saw it. The national championship games ratings dipped this past year with 2 massive brands in Ohio State and Notre Dame playing each other for the crown. I can't imagine what it would have been like if it would have been, I don't know, SMU and Penn State or something like that. And Penn State's still a big brand, but not as big as Ohio State and and Notre Dame. But you kind of wonder where this goes, right? And as you have, younger fans coming along, older fans kind of being phased out to a degree, what happens with the feel of college football as these changes are being made? Again, we're still going to be fans of it, but is that connection still going to be there as the same as it once was because of all these changes? And look, the changes aren't going to stop. If they think they can make more money off something, they're going to do it. I mentioned earlier, ESPN poses, hey, SEC and Big Ten, if you play a 13th game of the regular season, you'll get X amount of more dollars. Well, guess what? There's a 13th game of the regular season because, again, it makes money. And at the end of the day, that's why all those things are happening. That's why conferences have been blown up. That's why the Big Ten is coast to coast, because the California schools, and to a later degree, the teams from the sinking ship that was the Pac-12 wanted more money, wanted to be able to use their brands to benefit more in the Big Ten than they did in the Pac-12. Same thing with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. They're big brands. They could make more by being in the SEC than they were in the Big 12, so they jump ship. We've got conferences that go coast to coast now. It's no longer a regional, small kind of thing where you can drive to every away game within 3 to 4 hours. That's not the case anymore. Oklahoma's a long drive away if you went out there for that game. And again, it's these kind of things that, again, I love the sport, and you're probably going to continue to love the sport. But that magic and that feel of it being as special as it once was, I do think is fading away for a lot of people. Let me know your thoughts, 803-404-6100 on the Firehouse subs. Text line will get to some of those a little bit later on in the hour. But it is Friday, and coming up next, we'll check out with our guy Joe Machica from thebigspur.com over what happened last night with women's basketball as they dismantled the Arkansas Razorbacks, bouncing back from the loss to UConn on Sunday. It is the Extra Point. It's our head here on the game. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game. As we do each and every Friday at 10:15, as joined by our guy, Joe Machika from thebigspur.com. And Joe, looking at last night's game over at Colonial Life Arena, I was expecting a slaughter of the Arkansas Razorbacks, and, well, we got just that. Carolina winning 95-55 to shake off the frustration, I guess is the best way to put it, from the UConn loss on Sunday.
Yeah, Tyler, no better way to describe it. Pleasure to be joining you this Friday morning. But yeah, no, it was a butt kicking over there at CLA last night, and certainly got the frustrations out. Joyce Edwards looked great. Malaysia Fulwiley was great. She gave Sports Center plenty of plays to choose from. Looking at the top 10, so a couple behind the back passes and whatnot. They looked great offensively. Still some things to work on, but the defense was a lot better last night. And I think the team could probably agree with that. I mean, it's just like they were Loctite on man-to-man situations, and everyone did their job on the defensive end, which led to a lot of offense and, as we saw, a lot of scoring.
I guess it's kind of smart to back up because we only talked to you on Fridays. How did you process what you saw at CLA on Sunday with Carolina losing by 29 points in the way that they did? Because it's one thing to lose, and nobody would have been shocked, oh, wow, UConn beat Carolina. That's nothing crazy, but to beat them in that fashion and to see the team look un-Carolina-like for the entire 40 minutes was very eye-opening to a lot of people. How did that go down from your perspective?
Yeah, Tyler. I mean, it was certainly a surprise that they came out flat, right? They had an issue with that earlier on in the season, and it seemed to have been a thing of the past once they started winning again. And after that UCLA loss. So it just showed up again late in season against a really good team in UConn. And, you can't do that against UConn. Gino Auriemma, AZ Flood, and Paige Becker's right. And also Sarah Strong had a great outing for UConn. So South Carolina started slow, and UConn, realized it and reacted. And being the good team that they are with the good coach that Gino is, they just, took the reins and didn't let go, right? So South Carolina needs to fix. I mean, obviously a shock that they came out flat, and but again, can't do that against good teams. UConn taught them that lesson, and it was a surprise again because you had lost Texas, and you would have thought, especially the way that they played against Florida, everything was going to be all right. But I don't know, for some reason they came out flat in front of their home crowd, and everyone's trying to wash that game behind them because it certainly wasn't them.
Well, somebody that was definitely trying to wash the game behind them was Malaysia Fulwiley, and Coach Staley talked about it after the game last night. She had a very tough emotional response to losing that game on Sunday. And Preston and I were kind of knocking this around a little bit earlier. Do you think Malaysia Fulwiley's ever actually lost a game by 29 points in her entire basketball career? Because part of state championship teams, obviously been on this Carolina team for 2 years and only suffered 3 losses since then. She legitimately may have never actually lost by that many points in a basketball game, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah, no, Tyler. I think Fulwiley's one of them, but there's a lot of players on this roster that probably have never lost by 29 points. Joyce Edwards was legit, and her high school team was also really good. I mean, Dawn talks about Raven Johnson being a winner, but Fulwiley, especially, I don't know. Maybe out on the park one day, there's been a 29-point loss, but I don't know. Some of the moves that Fulwiley was pulling out after the loss to UConn last night were insane.
Yeah, like you said, she's appearing on the SportsCenter Top 10, which she seems to do about once every single week with some of the behind-the-back stuff and the theatrics she's really good at pulling out off the court. I did enjoy Dawn's response to your question of, hey, do any of these highlights surprise you that Fulwiley is doing? And she basically said, well, I just hope she, scores and doesn't mess up. And as long as she's doing that, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I know. I was actually kind of surprised that Dawn said, she still surprises me. And Joyce Edwards gave me a similar answer to that question. She was like, we see it every day in practice, and it's still shocking. And Fulwiley has that effect, right? Just the moves that she does. There was a reverse layup last night that she was at the block, Tyler. It was kind of insane how far away from the basket she was on a reverse, and she just lays it up and makes it look, second nature. So it's a special player that Dawn Staley's got. They're with Fulwiley, and with her playing well on the defensive end, it sparks her offense, and so it's exactly what you need going down into this last stretch of games here for this team.
And speaking on that defensive side, she was paired up when she was on the court with Izzy Higginbottom on the other side, who is not only Arkansas's leading scorer, but one of the leading scorers in the entire nation. And she kept her in check for the most part. 10 points on 3 of 17 from the field. Majority of her points coming via the free throw line and making 1 3-pointer. So it's not just the dazzling offense from Malaysia Fulwiley. It's the ability to get things done on the other side of the court as well.
Yeah, absolutely. She's always said it starts with her defense, right? You will see more theatrics and more crazy things come out on the offensive end if she's playing well in the defensive end. She's starting to learn how to get that going, right? And more defensive stops will, lead to better mojo on the offensive end. So I think that's huge for the sophomore guard, right? She's learning, she's developing, and then, it's been fun watching the pairing between her and Joyce Edwards on the offensive end. Like, they know where each other are at all times and, score the basketball really, really efficiently, and are part of the reason why this South Carolina bench is one of the best in the country.
Well, and part of making the statement last night was obviously winning by 40 points, which is about the average they are averaging after losing a game. But I thought the 57 rebounds last night really said a lot, considering the fact that not only did they lose a rebounding battle on Sunday, which, hey, you can lose a rebounding battle. That's not surprising. Losing in the fashion they did, I believe 49-28 was the disparity there. To go out last night, grab 57 rebounds, which was the most of the entire season, and out-rebound Arkansas by 29 total. That, to me, sent a message more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. It's a good point. The hustle stats stood out last night, right? It was the defensive end, the efforts on the defensive end, the rebounding that stood out last night. Everybody was getting involved, rebounding. And so, yeah, it was just an all-around team effort last night. I mean, Miriam Dowda had, I believe it was 9 points, 8 rebounds against her former team. So Shout out Dowda coming off the bench looking good. And, again, it was just a good win to bounce back. And, sure, Arkansas is not the best team in the world. But, again, it's exactly what you needed to do for the caliber of team that you have shown that you are for this women's basketball team to just bounce back.
And one thing that stuck out on Sunday was the fact they only had 7 assists on, I think, 23 made baskets, which was the lowest they'd had in like 3 years under Dawn Staley. And last night they go out there and have a season high in assists with 27 on 37 made baskets. So kind of getting back to that form of what we expect of a team of this caliber with this amount of talent, moving the ball around, setting each other up, and ultimately making baskets like that.
Yeah, Tyler, the trust on the offensive end is exactly what you want to see, right? I mean, I think against UConn, it's not that they didn't have trust on the offensive end. They just looked out of sync. And so when you're moving the basketball, it's always a good sign of chemistry and where things are at within the squad and how the energy is for that game. So, last night it was certainly there, moving the ball around nicely, and everybody got involved. It was nice to see.
We'll talk a little bit more about where this team's at right now, what it means going forward as we creep closer to the SEC tournament coming up on the other side. He's Joe Machika from thebigspur.com. Tyler Head along with you here on the Extra Point on your Friday here on the game.
I mean, we don't like to lose, obviously, and we don't like to lose the way we've lost the 3 games, and there's a certain focus to just get back to our habits, and hopefully we can continue that as we, as the regular season comes to a close, and we got some games in which we got to play well in order for us to win.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday, joined as always for a couple more minutes by our guy Joe Machica from thebigspur.com. That, of course, was Don Staley last night talking after the 95-55 win on the team being dominant after losses, which unfortunately has happened 3 times this year. But I feel like kind of in a similar way, just like last week against Florida, coming off the loss to Texas. Feel pretty good about the team, but there's still a game on Sunday. Now, taking on Vanderbilt is not the same challenge as taking on number 7 UConn was here this past Sunday at Colonial Life Arena. But I think we're all to the point now where we're wondering, is there another slip up on the way, maybe before the regular season ends, like Kentucky coming up here in the last game?
Yeah, Tyler, Kentucky is, the last team on their schedule that's, it's ranked. It's senior day at Colonial Life Arena, which makes me think, I kind of like South Carolina in that one still, but I don't know. This team has a lot of games left on their schedule. They've got to go up to Vanderbilt, deal with Michaela Blakes, who's, one of the most dynamic scoring freshmen, in the country. So you got to shut her down, and then you got to go on the road to Ole Miss, right? A team that was also ranked at one point, and then you come home to Kentucky. I mean, I think if you execute, get back to what this team's identity, is, as Don was mentioning there in the clip as you were rolling in, I think you should take care of Vanderbilt. You should take care of Ole Miss. But then also, I mean, so you got to come home, you got to and prove, you can beat a really good team, in Kentucky, right? You've struggled in your last 2 ranked games, which happens, right? That's what, the whole vision was, with loading up the schedule is to play, as many experienced and tough teams as you can before tournament time. And so Kentucky will be the last one, on the schedule that will pose a threat before you hit the SEC tournament. And, you have to execute in that one in front of your home fans. Again, you got a good team. It's senior day. Have to deliver if you want to, continue with momentum rolling into these tournaments.
By the way, I'm glad you mentioned Michaela Blakes because she has scored over 50 points twice so far in conference play, once against Florida and then once against Auburn just the other day. Had 34 points last night in their 101 loss to Oklahoma. So she is definitely a scoring machine and somebody that is going to have to be accounted for in this game on Sunday. So that will not be a walk in the park to defend her.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I think we'll see a rotation, right? It's usually been Bree Hall to start guarding the number 1 scorer defensively, and then I expect to see maybe Full Wiley get some runs as Hall exits. So we'll have to see what the primary and secondary matchups will be, but I'm expecting Hall and Full Wiley. Again, it's going to be great to see this team match up with such a good scorer. We haven't really seen that. I mean, Beckers is kind of an exception there, leading her team in scoring, but Blake's is, shooting the lights out. She's been scoring at a ridiculous rate. So we'll see how this team matches up with the primary scorer. And also, I mean, South Carolina's built on depth, so I'd expect the depth to get involved early and often in that game.
So there's still 3 more games to go in the regular season. Still have an SEC tournament in Greenville, still have the NCAA tournament and all that. But right now, what is the story of this team through 95% of the regular season, including 3 losses, one of those being a huge blowout loss to UConn the other day? If you're writing the story of the season to this point, Joe, what are you leading with?
I mean, I think that this certainly during the regular season, this team has been battle tested, right? They've played a lot of good teams. I mean, leads the country in ranked games against ranked teams, so nobody can really say that they weren't playing anybody. I think that's the first green flag for this team going forward, or the storyline for this team. And they still control their own destiny in the SEC tournament and in the NCAA tournament. It's going to be a battle depending on where seeding is and who you're going to have to match up with. You're going to have to play a team that you've lost to eventually down the road, I would think, in the NCAA tournament, unless chaos happens and there's big upsets. But we'll have to see. I mean, I think so far so good for this team, right? They're battle tested, yes. I mean, obviously, you certainly expectations were sky high because of what you were able to accomplish last year. But this team is different. I think this team might have needed these 3 losses to really find out their true identity and how to keep playing South Carolina women's basketball, stay on brand and find out who they are and continue to play that way consistently. So still a long ways to go. They control their own destiny, like I said, but so far so good and battle tested is the way I'd start off at least.
And that's my thing. And look, Dawn Staley has obviously earned the benefit of the doubt a very long time ago with all that she has accomplished. And I kind of see this as almost kind of a fork in the road for this team, right? Like that loss to UConn was shocking to all of us. And they could either go out there and maul every opponent from here on out and win the national championship in comfortable fashion, or, they could get eliminated in the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. Like, those are real possibilities that we haven't really thought about with this team the past couple years, but they've shown vulnerabilities. They've shown they can be beat even on their home floor for the first time in over 4 years. So, again, this is kind of the first time that I've ever started to have any doubts about this team in my time here covering them, that, it could be a great year with another national championship, or could be one where you don't even reach another Final Four.
Yeah, Tyler, right. And, I think, I know within this program, they don't necessarily like to say you can take good things from a loss, but I think the UConn loss was enough of a gut check to be like, okay, everybody here is human, right? And bad things can happen if we, just go in expecting like you're going to win. So, I think the one good thing that you can take is that it was a bad enough loss to make everyone realize, like, okay, here we go. We need to reset and make sure that we can get back to the identity of who we are consistently. And, again, it's the UConn loss can be used for good in that way. And again, I think it'll help with momentum, right? Because they are, pissed off within that program and they don't feel good about the loss. So, going out in these next 3 games in the regular season and then also making a statement in the SEC tournament, would be a perfect recipe for success for this team, considering that the losses that they've had.
Well, it seems only fitting that Texas got their loss here. Carolina got their loss on the road in Austin, and right now, if both teams went out, they would have to flip a coin for who gets the number 1 seed. But let's just say they both ran the table through the SEC tournament and met in the tournament final up there in Greenville. Only be fitting to have the rubber match on a neutral site to see who really comes out on top heading into the NCAAs at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. You love it when storybook, storylines or plot lines, work out like that. And I think, that it would certainly be destiny for a rubber match, on neutral ground. I think the South Carolina team thinks that they would take that game pretty handily if it's on, a neutral site and everything. And, the officiating is fair and spread out and all that. So I think it would go a long way. And it would be a rematch I'd certainly like to see. And obviously you would hope that this team would see either UCLA or UConn to get that revenge as well in the NCAA tournament. But yeah, the first look at revenge is Texas, and I think this team's hungry for it for sure.
We'll see what happens. Again, one more or a home game or away game coming up on Sunday as they take on Vanderbilt. That game will tip off at 3 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 2:30 here on the Game, and then next Friday we'll be talking about the final regular season game against Kentucky at home the following Sunday, and then getting set for the SEC tournament up there in Greenville.
Yeah, Tyler, senior day, it'll be good. Everyone get out to Colonial Life, support the seniors. And, it should be a pretty good atmosphere and, good way to send this team off, getting ready for tournament time. Some big basketball ahead of us and, excited to be a part of it and bring everyone the coverage on the Big Spur.
Well, we will let you get back to work. Appreciate your insight as always, and we'll check in with you next week.
Tyler, appreciate you having me as always, and, enjoy your weekend.
Absolutely. That's Joe Machika from thebigspur.com. And again, Sunday's game against Vanderbilt tipping off at 3 o'clock with pregame coverage starting at 2:30. That's on our sister station, by the way, 98.5 WOMG, as Gamecock baseball will be in action, taking on Milwaukee with a 1:30 first pitch and pregame coverage starting at 1:15. All right here on the Game. By the way, speaking of that Game 3 against Milwaukee to wrap up the series coming up on Sunday, I do have 2 family 4-pack tickets to go see that game. Go see Coach Maneri's team in action as they wrap up the series against Milwaukee coming up on Sunday. Callers number 3 and 4 right now at 803-404 6,100 will win yourself that family 4-pack of tickets. And we'll come back and wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. Get some of your thoughts on if college football is indeed losing its magic. That's coming up next. It's The Extra Point. I'm Tyler Head on your Friday on the Game. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's all right, along with you here on your Friday on the Game. Been asking the question all morning, do you believe in magic in college football? And is it starting to slip away for you if that is the case? If you're just tuning in, I was perusing the college football Reddit site yesterday, and a post caught my attention. entitled, Could a NASCAR Fan Explain What They Did to Lose Their Magic, like some people are saying college football is. Of course, being a huge NASCAR fan myself, I understand the question being asked, and I can speak from experience of, where NASCAR was, say, 20 years ago compared to where it is now. It's a night and day difference, and even watching it as passionately as I still do, I recognize that it doesn't quite have the same feel as it once did because so many elements of the sport have changed over time and kind of taken some of that away, even for a diehard fan like myself. And the top reply to this post from Madman's 1983 says, never-ending change. And it goes on to elaborate on that, but that's kind of the crux of what he's talking about. And we're in a state of constant change in college sports, specifically football, which is what we're kind of keying in on here. And I asked your thoughts as well on the Firehouse Subtext on 803-404-6100 on if the magic is being lost for you in college football. I want to get to some of the replies of what you guys have sent in. And by the way, I appreciate your input here on the show. Nameless Texter says the SEC and the Big Ten are going to ruin college sports. It's coming. If you do not like two conferences wielding most of the power, then yes, the magic is going to be lost on you pretty quickly, because that's where we're at now. And with this new, what we expect to be either a 14 or 16 team college football playoff format, most of that decision making is being done by the Big Ten and the SEC, because the other conferences surrendered their power, because if they weren't, then the SEC and the Big Ten were going to go off and do their own thing, and they didn't want that because that means that the ACC and the Big 12 and all these other conferences would have gotten absolute crumbs in whatever they scramble to try and figure it out, compared to latching on to the bigger shark that is the SEC and the Big 10 and trying to profit from those organizations and conferences still being involved. So yeah, if you don't like that, then it's going in the wrong direction for you. Nameless Texter weighs in and says the magic is not fading; it's been gone. The issue is the transfer portal in combination with the NIL. In the past, you could get to know players, you could get to love them, and you could get to really connect with them. Nowadays, with a lot of teams, that connection's gone. Carolina has been able to keep up. Carolina has been able to keep it. Clemson has been able to keep it. Many, like FSU and Colorado, have not. Many other teams become very similar. And that boils down to you do what you have to do to win, right? If you're a coach, and from an individual standpoint as a player, you're going to go to whatever option you feel like suits you the best, whether that be via playing time, whether that be via getting more money through NIL, or a combination of the two. Everybody's looking out for themselves. Coaches are looking out for making their roster as best as possible. And yeah, you could have that 5-star quarterback on your roster that you sat in his living room with his mom and dad and told him you were going to take care of him and he was going to be the future of your program and all this kind of stuff. But his first year as a starter wasn't all that great. And there's an even better, more seasoned option at quarterback out there in the portal that wants to come to your school. Well, guess what? You're going to take him because he's going to give you a better shot at winning, and you're going to upset, Mr. 5-star in the process. But as long as you're winning and as long as it works out better for you in the long run, that's all you end up caring about. So it does go both ways, but that's kind of the dog-eat-dog world of college football now, where everybody's looking out for their own individual interest. And again, I don't have any problems with the players benefiting and getting paid and all that kind of stuff. I've been pro player for a long time, but from the perspective of asking this question that I've asked this morning, I get it. If that's turning you away, I get that you're not seeing guys stay around for 2, 3, and 4 years like they used to. That was the norm. It used to be when somebody transferred, that was a big news, right? Think about when Jalen Hurts left Alabama to go to Oklahoma. Now, yes, that was at the very beginning of the transfer portal era. It had not grown into the monster that it is today, but that was headline news. Oh, my God. The former starting quarterback at Alabama is leaving to go to Oklahoma. This is so big. Now it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Carson Beck left Georgia to go to Miami, and nobody's going, oh, my God. It was surprising that he basically pulled his name out of the draft, but, nobody's like, okay, it's fine. That's just how college football is now. We've kind of accepted it as a norm. And I think that's the thing, is when you get numb to things, that's when the magic really is lost on you. Because you hated it initially, probably with like this burning passion, right? If you could have been anti-transfer portal, anti-NIL, and all this kind of stuff, but to still enjoy college football, You have to just accept those as normal things as part of the game. You could be against the 12-team playoff, 14-team playoff, expanded playoff, whatever you want to call it. But if you want to enjoy college football, guess what? You have to accept that as part of it. And this bit of like lethargicness sets it, or apathy. I guess apathy is the right word. You have apathy towards it, where you hate it, but you're not trying to exhaust any more energy to hate it more. You know what I mean? So you're just kind of like, ugh, got to deal with this. It's just part of it. And that's where that magic can go away, right? Because what a part of the game, let's just say you loved the BCS, right? You thought the BCS was the perfect way to decide a national champion because you had to pretty much be undefeated or have really one good loss, as well as conference championship and all those other things to have any shot of just playing in the national championship game. And now we're opening it up to where 3-loss teams can get in, teams with egregiously bad losses, like both teams that played in the national championship. One lost to a 500 Michigan team, one lost to a MAC team in Northern Illinois. Like those kind of things used to be the end of your season, and now they're not. So if you appreciated the perfection it took to win, say, a BCS national championship or even a 14 playoff national championship, because you had to be pretty darn perfect to be part of those too, you're probably apathetic towards a 12-team or just general expanded format because you're letting more teams in the dance, which is accepting mediocrity to agree with some of these schools. I mean, Clemson would have never been anywhere near the college football playoff as a 3-loss ACC champ in years past, but because it's a 12-team format that let in AQs via conference championships, guess what? They got a shot. Now they got beat by Texas, so it didn't last very long, but they were still in it regardless. And burns even more considering the fact that Carolina was sitting by the wayside, having beaten them only a few weeks prior. So again, appreciate the insight. A lot of good stuff there from you guys waiting in the Firehouse Subtext line, and just an interesting thought exercise, I guess, in terms of discussing where college football is at as of right now. That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. A lot of Gamecock softball discussion. Going to be joined by Cade Crenshaw of SEC Network Plus coming up to start the show. Then at 11:30, Coach Ashley Chastain Wood are going to join us to recap what's been a phenomenal start to her tenure here as South Carolina softball coach. That's up next here on The Game. $11 o'clock on your Friday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you here, getting you set for the weekend ahead. Wes rocking the toboggan today, as it's still apparently pretty cold outside.
Trying to be like Jack.
Yeah, Jack did have his on today. I asked him about him teasing you yesterday, and he said he doesn't know why everybody picks on him. I says, you're the northern guy. You're supposed to be tough in this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't really think I was picking on him. I was just having a little fun, but maybe Jack needs to toughen up a little bit.
Maybe so. Chris, toboggan or beanie? What do we call it?
Oh, it's a beanie for sure.
Beanie, okay. Yeah, it's interchangeable. It's okay. Cold outside, but plenty of great action taking into place this weekend for outside sports here at South Carolina. Of course, baseball getting set to take on Milwaukee later on this afternoon. And guys, we've got a loaded show to talk some Gamecock softball, who is off to a tremendous start this year, 11-0 for the first year under Ashley Chastain Woodard, who we'll talk to a little bit later on in the show. But joining us right now to kick things off from the SEC Network Plus, it is Kate Crenshaw, who here on the call for the South Carolina softball games. Kate, first of all, thank you so much for taking your time and joining us this morning. I got to ask, what was crazier, the come-from-behind walk-off against Virginia or seeing all those walks in a walk-off the other night against North Carolina?
Both equally weird, let's call it. You head into the final bottom half of the seventh inning, and South Carolina had their chances that day against Virginia, just left too many on base, and then just luck went their way, and they walked off a top 25 team. And then from there, you get 6 consecutive bases loaded walks. I don't know how nobody got ejected. I think if I'm North Carolina, not all those pitches had to miss, right? If you're on the opposing side, but it went South Carolina's way, and they're certainly off to a great start. By the way, toboggan all the way over beanie. Toboggan 10 times.
All right, toboggan's winning right now.
Thank you, Cade. Like I knew this was good. I knew you were going to be a great guest, man. I'm team toboggan all the way. This is Wes, by the way. Appreciate you hopping on with us, man. Let's talk about this start so far. I mean, obviously, you bring in a new coach, and you're trying to. If you're Chastain, you're kind of trying to instill your culture, and you've got returning players, you've got new players, you got players that transfer from Charlotte. You're trying to just put it all together. I mean, 11-0 couldn't start any better, obviously, and of course the competition is going to tick up here soon enough. But what have you seen from this group just in total so far, as someone who sees quite a bit of this team?
I think it all just comes down to a belief, right? When your team believes in its leader, they play maybe just a little bit harder, a little bit more. And for how this roster is made up, you've obviously got a good portion of kids that play for Coach Chastain Woodard in the past at Charlotte. They came here because they wanted to continue playing for her. They believed in her. So there's that innate belief. You've got your kids that were returners that always had the option to hit that transfer portal and leave, like some did. But those that stayed, it's because they had the belief. They had the buy-in. And also there's a really heavy mix of in-state kids. And I think just having the South Carolina name across your jersey means a whole lot more too. But when you take just a look at how this team has played so far, they've hit, guys. They've hit, and they've hit well. On the pitching side, you couldn't have asked for more. And then defensively, they've been outstanding. That first night, it was a night to forget on the defensive end. You had 5 errors, and I know that kept Coach Chastain Woodard up for quite some time, I'm sure. But since that game, they only have 1 error since, as they've gone on this strong winning streak to start the year. So overall, it's a mix of kids that are getting opportunities that maybe transferred in outside of maybe a Charlotte program that didn't get the swings that they wanted to. I think a girl like Quincy Lelio, right? She's that leadoff bat. She's their center fielder. Came in from Oklahoma, a team that has won 3 straight national championships now. They're the cream of the crop in college softball. And she brings that experience now to South Carolina, and she's getting those consistent at-bats and consistent opportunities, and she's hitting .586 on the year, which I think is a pretty solid number to have, not to mention she's walked 15 times. So anytime you can put a leadoff batter on base as much as she has been out there, that's going to lead to success. They've got a good mix of power. They've got a good mix of speed on the base paths and some really, really strong arms on the pitching staff side. I know Coach Chastain Woodard has said she wants a bigger staff in the future. They've got 5 arms right now, but I think they've got 5 really, really strong arms right now.
Kate, it's Chris. Generalized question for you on the SEC. Of course, this league is always strong. You have now added to that strength by having Oklahoma and Texas, of course, in the league. It only bolsters it. I think there was a season not too long ago where I think every single team but maybe one in this league made the NCAA tournament. So obviously it's going to be incredibly competitive. What's your kind of take on the overall strength of the conference? Is it exactly what we thought? Once again, is it even better? Are they maybe poised to, as a conference, maybe take a little bit more open, a little bit more of a step back? What's your general assessment of the conference this year?
We say South Carolina's off to a great start at 11-0, and certainly that's the case. Best start since 1996. But the conference as a whole, you've got 7 teams that are at least 10-0. It is the strongest conference in college softball in the country, no doubt, no competition whatsoever. And like you said, you add in Texas and Oklahoma, who outside of the SEC, those were the 2 best teams that weren't in the conference beforehand. So, the slate just got that much tougher. And I know for South Carolina, they start out conference play at Oklahoma here in a couple weeks. So that's going to be an early test for them. But no, it's certainly a strong conference. It's a conference that's going to make up the NCAA tournament. You're going to see double-digit teams in there in the end. And we say we've got 7 teams that are undefeated and at least 10-0, and you've got at least 4 more that have no more than 2 losses on their record. So really the only teams that are struggling right now are Kentucky and Missouri, and surprisingly enough, Alabama too. Alabama the last few years has been one of those national powers. They've got off to a slow 6-5 start, but certainly think that's something they'll probably turn around and bounce back as we get closer to the SEC slate. But, you talk about a tough road to travel. The SEC is not for the weak.
Again, talking to Kate Crenshaw from the SEC Network Plus, what you're here on the call for Gamecock softball games. This pitching staff that you alluded to a moment ago is led by Jory Hurd. Great season last year, off to a very strong start this year. How do you compare what you're seeing out of her on the mound this year compared to last?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to more confidence, right? She's probably going to bring your highest velocity on this 5-person staff. She's going to throw the hardest, and what she's done in the circle so far is undeniable, right? 33 strikeouts across right at 28 innings of work, I believe. So, when they have needed to count on her, she has stepped up in a big-time way. I think a couple weeks back, I'm trying to remember the exact opponent because they played so much at home these first few weeks, but, struck out a career-high 10 one day. And it just seems that she's comfortable and kind of pitching freely a little bit. But you've got Jory Hurd in there. You've got Neely Lamb, who I think is going to be a big-time Gamecock for a couple years to come. She's a transfer from Charleston Southern, where last year she really, really put some work on the SID staff at Charleston Southern, just breaking every record book they had. She was freshman of the year. She was pitcher of the year for the Big South. She was first team all-conference, and she was the first person ever in league history to do all that in the same year. So you had her in. You had a vet like Sam Gress, who, I think for Coach Chastain Woodard, she's coached for the last few years at Charlotte. She's an experienced player now in her 5th year. That's who Coach Chastain Woodard brought to the preseason media day press conference, her and Brooke Blankenship. And, she's told me before, all the confidence in the world when Sam Gress is out there. You feel like as a coach, you can just take an extra breath knowing that the ball's in Sam Gress's hands. And then you've got 2 freshmen in Olivia Katowski and Katie Becker who are going to grow and be big parts as the season goes on. And they pitch in some big spots too and got some key strikeouts. I know Becker started a little bit as well. So overall, the pitching staff is really, really strong this year. I think that was maybe an area that you had a question mark going into the season of maybe not having as many arms as you would like, and especially 2 of those arms being true freshmen. But when you have Jory Hurd and Neely Lamb and Sam Gress as your anchors, you're going to be okay.
Cade, let's talk a little baseball. You're obviously involved on that side too with the play-by-play. What have you thought so far? I mean, obviously a lot of good. I'm still curious to see what this pitching staff looks like once they get into SEC play. I think there's some depth there. I know Maneri has mentioned, hey, do we have that just kind of elite Friday prototypical SEC guy? Maybe not, but what we've seen from the three guys that went last weekend, I thought was you can be pretty optimistic about it, but what have maybe been some overall just big picture thoughts on the team so far through 5 games on the baseball side?
Yeah, I think when you take a look at your weekend rotation of Dylan Eskew, Matthew Becker, and Jake McCoy, who's going to go that 3 in order again this weekend, some people might not put them in the elite category nationwide, but those 3 are pretty doggone good. And, last week they showed it. And look, I get Sacred Heart doesn't sell the same name like maybe an SEC team would, but that was a team that was a conference champion a year ago. That was a team that was a win away from a regional, and they absolutely mowed them down 15 innings. They gave up 4 hits combined, and they each had 9 strikeouts each of the 3 days. So starting rotation-wise, you feel comfortable right now. And also those are 3 guys that have been through the ringer and gotten some big-time experience. I look at a guy like Dylan Eskew, and Dylan Eskew is a guy that maybe in the past wanted a little bit better command, at times, dealt with some walks because there's so much movement on his ball. As a hitter, it's almost like you don't see any other pitch like it just because there's so much break on his pitch. But he and Coach Terry Rooney have really worked hard in getting that command under control, and that's what he did last week. Opening day, big moment, career high 9 Ks and no walks. He was big. And then you roll into Saturday, Matthew Becker, this is a kid that's a lifelong Gamecock. He's a Chafin kid, camped here, dreamed of playing here, got that opportunity, and he's just grown and grown and grown. I think back to his freshman year. First career start was against number 1 Texas, and he strikes out 11 that day. And then last week, just had good composure on the mound. He's a fun personality for this team, an easy kid to root for. So Matthew Becker's going to bring a lot to this team this year. And then Jake McCoy, he's a guy that missed the start of last year, had a bit of a lingering preseason injury. And then we got our first look at him in a road series. I believe it was at Ole Miss. That was the first time we got to see Jake McCoy last year. And, just left side, last year he was about 95 generally. This year he's touching up 97, 98. And that is in that elite category, if that's what you're looking for, is 97, 98 from the left side. So, and he's your Sunday guy and just a sophomore. So all in around, this pitching staff has really impressed so far. That's certainly been the story that a lot of people are talking about through 5 games because, like I said, I thought Sacred Heart was a really good team. Tuesday night at Winthrop, you may be talking about a Big South champion in Winthrop from Tuesday night. That was a really, really impressive team. And then on Wednesday, I think Coach Stuart Lake and I on the broadcast, we called it a mental toughness day. It was a little chilly, a little cold, but you still persevered. And I think that's a Queens team that's going to make some noise in the A-Sun this year. So, you're not on the same level of competition that you're going to see when half of your league is in the top 10 in the country, but certainly a solid start for the pitching staff for South Carolina baseball.
Again, he is Cade Crenshaw. You can hear him on the call for both South Carolina softball and baseball. Softball event in action again this afternoon to start the Garnet and Black Invitational, taking on Boston University at 5 o'clock. Again, later on this afternoon as they look to go to 12-0. Cade, we appreciate your time, and we'll be checking with you in the coming weeks.
Absolutely, guys. We'll talk to you on the radio this afternoon.
Absolutely. That is Cade Crenshaw, again, from the SEC Network Plus, and doing some fill-in work for Gamecock baseball as well. We'll come back and continue on with the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Wes and Chris sitting down with Coach Beamer the other day. A little bit of insight into what those guys talked about with them coming up next here on your Friday on The Game.
All right, Wes here for our friends over at Integrated Media. Hit them up today, 803-948-8327, or head on over to their site, integratedmediainc.com, where you can get an idea of some of the great things they've done all around the Midlands. They've been to my home. They've been to Chris's home. They've got great smart home services. That could be, of course, something as simple as maybe hanging a TV for you. Maybe you want to go all in on a home theater system, but put simply, they can do about anything you can dream up when it comes to upgrading the audio, the visual at your home, or security and cameras around your home, and, of course, interlinking those things all together to where you can maybe control it from your phone, your iPad, or even putting a tablet mounted somewhere in your home. So if that sounds like something you want to do, hit up our friends at Integrated Media. They can help come up with a customized plan for you. Again, head on to integratedmediainc.com.
And welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you here on the game on your Friday. We'll get back into the softball conversation coming up in about 10 minutes when Coach Chastain Woodard joins us talking about the 11 games so far and looking ahead to the Garnick and Black Invitational coming up again later this afternoon as they take on Boston University. You guys had to slip out a little bit early the other day when we were out at Firehouse Subs for good reason, had to go meet with Coach Beamer. You guys kind of do this on an annual basis to kind of get where things stand after the end of the season before we get into spring ball. And, of course, the hot news of the week was the latest additions, or what came to light with the latest editions of titles for Sterling Lucas as well as Torian Gray, as those guys getting well-deserved added accolades to their titles, and in addition to the contract extensions and raise they got a couple of weeks back. And that was something that he was certainly keen to talk about the other day with you guys.
Yeah, I had a great sit down with Coach Beamer. Certainly appreciate him taking the time. Appreciate Steve Fink for setting that up for us. We have, I was trying to think back. I'm pretty sure we've done that every year. I don't know if we did it I know there was still probably COVID protocols, but every offseason, I think starting like after the first year, we've been able to sit down, and it becomes just this kind of wide-ranging, hit on a bunch of different topics, conversation there in his office. And yeah, we had kind of just found out, even though it was official back in January, we had just found out that Torian and Sterling have those new titles, and it basically is what we talked about earlier this week. Is, hey, one, it's a way to reward those guys for what they've done, and when you are able to do what is asked of you, and then maybe even go above and beyond that, they want to reward you. Beamer wants to, as he said, take care of his coaches, do right by his coaches, and then, two, it really reflects some of the things that they have already been doing, and this is just more like, all right, let's give them titles that more accurately reflect kind of their roles within the program, and and maybe there's even an expansion from that. One thing he talked about with Mike Furry, who in December was named passing game coordinator on offense, was that's not just a title. Like, he was obviously in year one last year, and you're kind of getting settled in, and it was more like, all right, get settled in on the recruiting side, get settled in as the receivers coach, and then let's talk this next offseason, which would now be this offseason, and let's see where things are. And so for him, that's something where Beamer wants him to sort of take that title to heart and truly become someone who has a little bit more input in the passing game, a little more input in the offense as a whole. We know Sean Elliott, obviously the run game coordinator. So now you've got four guys with titles underneath the actual coordinators who are going to have roles within the structure on offense and defense.
Yeah, and that, with Furry, I'm glad you brought that up, Wes. I was actually going to bring that up. There was a lot of attention on the addition of Gray and Lucas's titles, and rightfully so. We talked about that when we were out at Firehouse the other day. But I think just Furry and what he's meant to the program in a very short time, right? Like, it was very clear how happy Shane Beamer is with the job that Furry's done, because after the 2023 season, remember, think back to that time, Beamer is frankly getting a lot of pressure. And I don't mean like internally, just a lot of people talking, and that happens when you have a disappointing season and go 5-7. That comes with the territory that people are going to say, blow it up, make changes, fire, every coach or almost every coach. And he stood pat in some areas. And that doesn't mean he stood totally pat, by the way. There were conversations about, obviously hard conversations, I remember he termed it, about how to get better. But he did make some changes that offseason to his staff. He dismissed a coach. He shifted some coaching responsibilities. You remember he brought in James Coley, who then summarily went to Georgia, a few weeks later. And so now you're going, okay, it's kind of late in the game here. I've got to go hire another wide receivers coach. Who are you going to go get? And he grabs Furry, who was a head coach, who's been an NFL player, who's been an NFL position coach. Very interesting background. And not surprisingly, some people said, oh, well, I wanted a big-time name. Well, Furry's come in and very quickly on a mission. Beamer, that's the terminology, Wes, you'll remember he kept using from a recruiting standpoint, hit the ground running. You look at the class that he just brought in, a 6-man class with four four-star guys in there, and he really has hit the ground running. And has been a big asset to this staff, not just with recruiting, which was an area they wanted to get better in, but he's done, it looks like, I think, a really good job with development too, which makes sense because this is a guy that has literally played at the highest level, so he knows exactly what that looks like.
And this is, again, these first couple articles you guys put out yesterday, it's part of things that are going to be coming out over these next couple weeks. And again, that was kind of the first thing you guys talked about with him that you released yesterday. Wes, what's kind of some of the other things people can be expecting you guys to roll out on Gamecock Central for this longer conversation you had with Coach Beamer?
Yeah, I'm excited for people to get to hear some of what he said. We talked about, again, a number of things, one being a little bit more on Mike Shula and the role that obviously the role is OC, but what does that mean in terms of him putting his stamp on this offense? How does Shane Beamer envision that? What is the next steps for Lenora Sellers? We all know what he did this past season, but there's still quite a bit of upside for him to grow. What does that exactly look like in Shane Beamer's eyes? There is more, we just talked about Furry quite a bit, but there is more from Beamer, some specifics on Furry and what he has sort of seen from him, what he believes his role is in this program moving forward. And let's see, what else was in there? I asked him if he had any personal designs for Williams-Brice Stadium he wanted to see.
Okay.
He didn't really bite on that one too much. It was more like, I'm just focused on football.
That's probably not his top concern.
But some coaches want to,
Yeah, that's true.
like, I mean, Ray Tanner designed that baseball stadium.
That's true. Now it's
He's out there. Ray
his
Tanner,
name.
basically had a shovel.
Yeah. So, I mean, he didn't bite on it, but I still, it may have been, I'd love to see I would love to see a 400-foot Gamecock behind the video board. I mean, I don't know. Like, some coaches just have ideas for stuff like that, but I think he was more, we talked about recruiting department structure. We'll get into that. Chris has a story on who he wants to see or who could emerge as leaders. Lots of different topics.
And again, those stories will be rolling out in the days and weeks to come from that conversation with Coach Beamer the other day. We'll talk to Coach Ashley Chastain-Woodard coming up next about her perspective on how the season started in her first year as the head coach for Gamecock softball as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along here on the game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Firehouse Subs, firehousesubs.com, and, of course, the Firehouse Subs app. As you know, your best, easiest way to get your lunch each and every day. Almost lunchtime now. Try something new or try your favorites. I know you all got your favorites. We got our favorites. Tyler's got his favorites. Turkey bacon ranch. I'm telling y'all, man, I had the meatball, add pepperoni on, what was that, Wednesday? Moving back up the list here for me. So, I don't know. Brisket, add bacon, still number one, but something about that meatball is good, man. So, I know y'all have your favorites. If you're hungry, it's time. Order your lunch now. Rapid Rescue to go. It's going to be waiting for you on the shelf when you walk in. Easy, efficient, 15 locations throughout the Midlands. Get it today. Get it right now.
Well, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris talking a lot of Gamecock softball on this Friday morning. Happy to be joined once again by the head coach of the Gamecock women, that being Ashley Chastain-Woodard. Coach, first of all, appreciate your time. I know it's a busy day for you with the game coming up later this afternoon against Boston University. Last time we talked to you, you had not yet coached a game. We're talking to you today sitting at 11-0. Could you have pictured a better start to the season for your team?
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me on. And you never really know what to expect going into the first few weeks of season, especially with a brand new team and a team that is so different from the past. But obviously couldn't be more excited and proud of the work they've done so far and really just getting started.
Coach, it's Wes. Like Tyler said, appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, of course.
I know you got to be proud, not just of the wins, but how some of these wins have come about. I mean, y'all have already dealt with some adversity in some of these games and against some legitimate Power 4 opponents as well. What have you been maybe most impressed about your team? And, of course, just the way they have kind of battled and not blinked when they've been down early in some of these contests.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just not counting themselves out. I'm in the dugout a lot during the game because I don't coach a base when we're on offense, and I call the game defensively. So I'm constantly around them in the dugout, and I just have been so impressed with just the maturity that they have shown up to this point. And, we've had several instances where we were down middle to late of the game, and, I think it would be really easy for them just to count themselves out and, just kind of say, well, this one got by us. But I just haven't felt that or seen that from them. They've had a really steady heartbeat, a lot of belief in what they're doing, and just really trusting and sticking to the plan. And, they just give themselves a chance to win, with that mindset. And I think you've seen that resilience and that toughness from them. So we're just really proud of them. I think that they've obviously performed really well. And, I think it's been a great start just to, build some momentum and confidence and belief and all the things that you need rolling into some tougher opponents over the next couple weeks.
Coach, it's Chris. Thanks again for joining us, taking the time out of your day. I wanted you to expand, if you could, a little bit on what you just said there with calling the game from the dugout, and maybe two things off of that. How many other coaches do that? Is it more typical that they coach a base? Like what went into your decision of how to structure your staff and how to involve yourself in the actual flow of the game? And then secondly, can you kind of give us a window into what that's like, calling the game and kind of juggling the other responsibilities in game that you have as a head coach?
Yeah, I am so blessed and fortunate to be surrounded by some amazing coaches and people that are on our staff, and people that, they just do such a good job. And, so for me, pitching's been my passion. I was a pitcher and I've always called the game. But I just would be remiss if I didn't mention that there's so much that goes into calling a game, and so much of the prep work and the plan and the approach and the offensive, I would say that the pitching aspect of like facing an offense is really Zach Parsons, our pitching coach. Zach joined us, when we started the fall semester from Murray State, and he came highly recommended by a ton of coaches that I respect across our league. And, he's had some pitching success with some really great arms at his prior stops. And, he's just really done a great job with our staff. So he's our pitching coach day to day. He's in the bullpen with them and every day and really in charge of their development. And, he really attacks our offensive, the offenses that we're going to face. And so, he puts a plan together, and then, he meets with me about it. He meets with our pitchers about it. And so it's collaborative in the game. You'll notice that him and I are next to each other on the end of the dugout closest to home plate here at our home venue. And, it's a collaborative effort. I mean, we are communicating constantly every at bat on what we see, where we're going, what the plan is. So it's not a solo mission for me. It's definitely heavily involved with Zach. And but it is a lot. So that's why, I don't do it solo. And, from an offensive perspective internally, that's all Katie Browder. I mean, she's our associate head coach and our offensive coordinator. So she's completely in charge of all of those decisions. So I just manage the lineup card and the substitutions with the umpires, obviously during the game. But it's very, conversational as the game starts of, what we're doing, who's a pinch hit opportunity based on the matchup, who are our first runners. In softball, you have a free substitution on all your starters. So there is, a ton of strategy that goes along with that of being able to re-enter and bring in, an upgraded runner or an upgraded defensive player at some point in the game, or, who is best fit for the matchup for this pinch hit opportunity. So, a lot of credit goes to the staff and the work that they put in and the hours that they pour into our plans going into every opponent that we face. We take every opponent really serious, no matter what the stat line says, no matter what conference they're in. We just want to respect everyone that we play and take the same approach against everybody and really instill that in our team. So that's just kind of my viewpoint of it. I've never coached a base in my career. It's just not really my strength. I always believe that we have people on staff that are way better at that than me. And so, usually you're going to see Katie, Jody, and Zach or some variation of those guys coaching first and third when we're on offense.
Coach, let's talk a little bit more about your pitching staff if we can. Looks like you've had kind of a five-person rotation so far, and an interesting mix just in terms of, some returning players here at South Carolina, some transfers in, then some younger players mixed in there as well. Just what's maybe stood out with your pitching background about the group so far, and have you been happy with what you've seen from them?
Yeah, obviously very happy with their performances, really all five of them. And we were really honest with the pitching staff from middle of the fall on that it was going to be very much a staff mentality. So you've seen appearances from all five, and, we're just trying to get them all into opportunities, to help them grow and learn. And, obviously the highlight so far has been Jory Hurd, and she's been here her whole career. She's a junior this year and has gotten progressively better her freshman, sophomore, and now junior year, and she's better than she's ever been. You're just seeing a ton of really high velo from her. She's experiencing some velocity that she's never experienced before, and, her ball has a lot of life to it. And so she's just, I think she's given us over 30 strikeouts of our 65 total as a staff. So a lot of swinging minutes, a lot of late, in the box with Jory on the field. So it's been fun. I think I would just describe her as, very steady and consistent and also electric at the same time. And so the team has just really enjoyed, getting behind her and just really, believing in her as she's gotten several appearances and many different types of appearances. Sometimes she opens for us. Sometimes we save her for a higher leverage situation later in the game. But really proud of all of them. Neely Land, Sam Gress, Neely had a ton of success in the Big South and, is obviously, in a different league and on a different team, but I've seen her grow and, her toolbox is bigger and better than it has been in the past. And, she's been really successful for us. And then I've got a lot of experience with Sam and just the ultimate competitor that she is and what she brings to the table. So, we're going to keep giving them all opportunities. You'll see all five of them. We really play to the matchups. We have a plan for everyone and, who's coming out of the bullpen for a game and, who gets it started, who's saving for a higher leverage situation later in the game. So there's a method to all of the madness and the chaos, but really proud of them. We have high strikeouts, low walks, and obviously have really dominated a lot of the opponents that we've played so far.
Again, talking to Coach Ashley Chastain-Woodard from Gamecock Softball. Let's jump over to the offense. You guys played at a lot of runs through 11 games so far, but your RBI leaders are Lexi Winters and Ari Rhodey, who came over with you from Charlotte. What does it mean not only for this entire offense to have success, but for those two to be some of the leaders of that group?
Yeah, I mean, we have a ton of trust in those two and a lot of history with them. And, at this point in their careers, they've played a lot and they've had a lot of experience. So, I think you're seeing that, just a level of maturity and confidence and, kind of that steadiness in the box. I was asked a couple of times about Rhodey's first weekend out. She had a little bit of a slow start compared to some of the other people in the order. But it just needs, you need time, you need at-bats, you need to get back in there. And so I wasn't worried about her, and she's obviously progressively gotten better throughout our first 11. And has had some big hits for us recently. So, our goal for her was just not to feel the pressure of having to repeat an All-American season, mentally, and just, that being, kind of what takes her out of her process and what makes her really good. So, we just want her to keep flushing up the ball really well and, hitting the ball square. So I like where she's at. I think, again, she's gotten better, as the season has gone along here early. And Lexi Winters, man, it just really gives me chill bumps. Like, she just is such a pro. I've got many innings of experience with her as a catcher at this point. I have so much belief and confidence in who she is behind the plate, and she makes every strike a strike, and every opportunity that we have to get an edge call, like a ball to a strike, she just gives us the best chance at that, and it's really powerful once the game starts. And her communication with the umpire and the management of the game is very elite. And those are the things we knew about her. And, that's why she's here. This is her hometown. And just to feel the crowd behind her, her family, her friends, just the people in the community that are really excited about her wearing the garnet and black. And, it gives me chills. It brings tears to my eyes. And it's just, to see her have the success and the big moments that she's had these first 11, you just can't write it. It's just like, it's so storybook, and sometimes the game is like that, and that's the beauty of it. And offensively, I think Lexi's really learned a lot in the at-bats that she's had her first half of her career, and, I think she's just, she doesn't strike out a lot. That's the thing about Winnie I've always really respected is that, she's going to hit the ball, she's going to square it up, and, when you do that, you don't swing and miss a ton. Like, it gives you it gives you a lot of opportunity, especially with where we're at right now with so many people on base. It makes things happen. It puts pressure on. And so just a ton of love and respect for both of those guys and really all through the order. I mean, I've been really impressed with top to bottom and, kind of the flashiness and just the energy that Quincy Lulio has brought to the leadoff spot. And, we really wanted that, like we wanted to expect that, but it's up to her to go do it, and just to see our plan for her and really her plan for herself to come to fruition the first 11 games has been really fun. And then you've got Shelton in the 2-hole, right, who is like, she was in and out of the order last year, and an early freshman, she graduated early, and just to see kind of see her come onto the scene as a really young player, it makes me really excited about the future. Because, Carly's going to be with us a really long time, and she's our future. She's our future leadership, infield, middle of the order, and it's really powerful for us to have lefty at the top. So, that's been really exciting.
Well, Coach, we appreciate your time, and best luck this weekend in the Garnet Black Invitation. We'll check in with you down the line.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the support.
Absolutely. That is Coach Chastain Woodard from Gamecock Softball. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Friday here on The Game.
I mean, we don't like to lose, obviously, and we don't like to lose the way we've lost the 3 games, and there's a certain focus to just get back to our habits, and hopefully we can continue that as we, as the regular season comes to a close, and we got some games in which we got to play well in order for us to win.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here on your Friday on the Game. That, of course, was Coach Staley after last night's pretty convincing victory over Arkansas, 95-55 after they responded from the loss on Sunday against UConn in the way we kind of expect them to. They've been averaging right around 39 points in the game, or point differential in the games coming off losses this season, and now we just have to wonder if they're going to have any of those slip-ups later on in the year. But last night certainly looked like the South Carolina team that we see more often than not over the course of this season. Malaysia Full-Wiley dazzling once again, getting SportsCenter top 10 highlights, great on defense, and adding another victory to the notch of what's been a great year in SEC play so far.
Man, well, you said it yesterday, Tyler, predicting a blowout. By the way, the line on this game was like 9.5 or 10.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Arkansas had, 2 SEC wins coming in?
Yeah, I mean, they're dead last in the standings.
Whew, that's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't gamble, but it seemed like maybe some free money floating out there on that one.
Seemed like a safe bet.
Yeah, and, man, they came out. Malaysia was awesome. Obviously, Joyce was awesome. Really, the entire team. It was a team effort, and they just took it to Arkansas. Fan base was into it. Great bounce back. Now, I don't know if Arkansas necessarily had the firepower to match up with South Carolina, but still, regardless, for them to come out and just win in dominant fashion, as opposed to, sometimes you do see in sports, you hope you get this type of bounce back, but sometimes you get like the other effect, and it's just kind of that hangover, like there is no bounce back, and so you got to think Dawn Staley pretty happy with what she saw yesterday. Very efficient day from Full-Wiley. She had her flash plays, but also made some really good basketball plays. And also, I don't know if Coach Staley's listening. She has said she does sometimes listen.
This is her favorite show.
There you go. Supposedly. Shout out to Coach Staley. She just announced that she's written a book.
All right.
So gonna have to get an autographed copy of that. But Coach, congrats. She's awesome in like every way, I feel like. So writing a book seems like just par for the course for her, but still pretty special.
Yeah, good stuff there. And as for the game, I don't know if I predicted a 9 or 10 point win, but I did predict on my staff picks on Gamecock Central, which are probably normally very wrong. A little bit of a closer game. And for a while, guys, this game was closer, but the Gamecocks just, especially second half, pulled away. Like you said, Wes, complete team effort. And I'm kind of workshopping a little bit of an interesting theory here. In the past, South Carolina's played this way under Dawn Staley, where they just throw so much depth at you. Anybody can hurt you on any given night. Typically, it's going to be more than one girl who's going to hurt you on a given night. It's going to be 10 or 11 players when they're really clicking, or more, really, that are out there able to hurt you, that you have to be cognizant of. In the past, Carolina could default to, if they were having maybe a little bit more of an off game, they could default to Cardoso, right? Or Boston or Asia Wilson. I think this team can default a little bit more to Full-Wiley. Like we saw in the UConn game, Carolina wasn't able to make it up in the second half, of course. Just a lot went wrong in that game. But Full-Wiley was able to make some plays in that game and make some things happen. And she did that last night. And I think, look, defensively, against Izzy Higginbottom, that's where it really started. Full-Wiley's she's always had that ability in her because of her amazing athleticism, but defensively, she's just gotten so much better. She can be a menace. And then, of course, her speed, her ability to shoot from outside, her ability to finish. And she had the alley-oop double clutch layup last night. Her passing, she dished several incredible passes last night. She can be kind of an X factor for them to where if maybe some shots aren't going down or they're struggling a little bit offensively, getting kind of clogged, she can go out and make some things happen for them. It's a different style team, of course, than just, hey, feed the post and let everybody else do work. Fulwiley's really been an X factor this season. I think will continue to be. 3
more games left in the regular season for South Carolina. Next one on the road Sunday, taking on Vanderbilt. 3 o'clock tip. Pregame coverage starting at 2:30 on our sister station, 98.5 WOMG. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with Terry Ford up next on your Friday here on the Game.